because of the shutdown, like did Trump say like more of you guys get out there and do nothing?
People oftentimes need to take a step back and again remember that everyone is an individual.
I will defend so many of her albums till I die, but not this one.
These hosts are dumb. You should not be so opinionated at that age because you're ignorant and don't know how things work. Oh, works. He spelled work wrong.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Washed Up Weekly. I'm Abby and this is Colin and this is episode 27. And if you can see, we're in a different setting. Um, this is proof that we're actually in DC. This is the Washington Monument right here.
Yeah, and we're washed up. We're here to deliver the weekly news so you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents do. And as Abby alluded, you can see the little skyline here. I think that's
I
the
think that's the
Capitol right
capital.
there.
Yeah,
Not doing anything at the moment because the government is shut down.
which I guess we can get right into that
Yeah.
then. That's a great transition. So with the government shutdown, it's been 5 days. Currently, it's October 5th right now?
Mhm.
Yeah, October 5th. And basically, Congress couldn't decide on voting on funding, didn't get to 60 votes. So because of that, the government has been shut down. And we can talk about how we have personally seen it affect DC itself since we're in like the center of it, I guess. I mean, it affects like the whole country, but let's see.
Well, so it's interesting because I think people like to politicize shutdowns like they do everything else in DC, and they like to say that like it's a Democrat versus Republican thing. As people who watch the show know, we don't really like to think in those terms. I think a lot of times it doesn't really produce the best like critical analysis. And so, yeah, the shutdown is a big deal in the sense that like well, actually, I don't know. I personally don't think it's that big of a deal because a lot of the operations of the government will continue regardless. Like,
It's just it's just things like delays and annoyances, like slower processes when it comes to things like I know FAFSA is going to be a little slower. Like I was talking to my mom about it today because my brother is still in college and things like food stamps, which is so annoying. That is so annoying because I currently have some of those and I have been very annoyed with that as well. I wonder if it's going to affect me paying my loans. So I haven't like because
mhm.
I paid for it a couple weeks ago, so I haven't dealt with it since the shutdown started.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of government programs will continue as usual because they're kind of funded on this like ongoing basis as opposed to need to be voted upon in order to be funded. And so from that standpoint, I guess that's why I was saying like it's not a big deal. Although if the longer it goes on, the more potential it has to cause disruption, as you were saying, to those programs that people rely on. And also for the workers who are continuing, who are working for the government, they're not getting paid necessarily on schedule and so that could obviously harm morale in a pretty serious way. Like I'm taking a flight on Friday and I'm a little bit nervous of flying out of DCA and like I think the air traffic control people who work for the FAA and whatnot, I don't know that they're getting paid their regular salary on a regular basis.
I've noticed it a lot too because I work in an area of DC where a lot of federal workers work. And I've noticed buildings being a little emptier, metro rides being a little emptier as well, whereas like peak metro time in the morning would probably be around like 7:30 to 8 a.m. And I've noticed not as many people being there. And I've noticed also like a lot of happy hours. It's just so DC of them for a bunch of happy hours to be making deals because of this government shutdown, whether it be just as like a nod to things or genuinely because people aren't getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, all the congressional staffers don't know what to do with themselves. I don't know if some of them are still going to work or not. Haven't personally asked the ones that I do know, but I see them running out on the mall all the time. Like they look like they need something to do. So, um, yeah, I don't know. As far as other disruptions, I was a little bit worried about like trash pickup and even police, but I think they've got those managed by probably the city, and so I haven't noticed or seen any disruptions. I don't really anticipate any either. And they've got the National Guard out there all day long, every day. So
I've seen the National Guard. I don't know if it's because I've just been noticing them more, but within the last week, I swear I've seen them way more
I
than I
think there's
have
more
this entire.
for sure.
Right, okay,
I
okay.
think there really is more.
I'm like, is this because of the shutdown? Like, did did Trump say like more of you guys get out there and do nothing? Like,
Yeah,
go scare him with your National Guard
I
presence.
mean, to their credit, we've seen them kind of disperse out in the city, whereas before, when we started talking about this, it really was concentrated almost exclusively on the mall and
Oh, they're
maybe the
spreading.
metro. I see them walking down the streets more like internal downtown DC. Still haven't really noticed much effect out of it. There's still people on the street who, like heckle you and whatnot. There's still seems like a lot of shadiness going on. So whether it's actually caused like a slowdown or a crackdown on crime, I guess the statistics will have to bear that out.
The true sign of there being, quote, no crime would be if my CVS and Walgreens and Targets would just free the lotions. Like,
Yeah, for real. So I think that pretty much gets at what's going on in DC at the moment. We actually intended for this episode to be a little bit lighter and focus on what most people are talking about this week, which is the new Taylor Swift album. But before we get into the light stuff, I think it would be good to hit on another serious topic that's kind of reaching a culmination this week, which is the Gaza-Israel conflict. And supposedly they've reached some kind of a preliminary ceasefire where Israel and Netanyahu have been working with the Trump administration to try to come to terms that everyone can agree upon. And Gaza and Hamas have conditionally accepted that in terms of they agree that they want there to be a ceasefire and they're even agreeing to a lot of the terms, but there's some sticking points and logistics that need to be hammered out before you can say like there's officially an end to the war. But I think like all of us can agree this war has gone on a really long time.
mhm.
We've been covering it from the beginning in various different capacities, and it's just the longer it's gone on, the worse it seems that the atrocities have gotten. And I think if they can actually reach some kind of a peace agreement, um, I can't imagine why that would be bad for any given party. I think everyone at this point is pretty willing to come to that negotiating table, and I hope that it does actually yield results.
We have been covering it for a very long time, and we've seen so much happening within this topic. Definitely I agree with you. Like I want there to be a deal being made that is amicable for both sides. I something that we were talking about is the declaration of the genocide on the Palestinian people in Gaza. Before this podcast, we thought that it would be important to kind of come on our space and call it what it is. Like people have been talking about it and saying that it's been a genocide from the beginning. But I think it would be kind of interesting to walk through and talk about when maybe we thought or saw um, or opened our eyes to that it is also a genocide.
Yeah, I mean, I can think back to about 2 years ago. So it's October 5th, and I remember that day, October 7th, really, really vividly when this whole thing kind of started, and how we, as pretty new exec members at our college newspaper, were just trying to figure out like what's going on. This is a really complex geopolitical situation that goes back decades, if not centuries, if not millennia, and that was something that was really, really challenging, and we definitely did not always get it right in our reporting, but we tried, and I think we did as good of a job as I think we possibly could have given those circumstances. But yeah, as far as how to designate this conflict, I think obviously on October 7th, everyone was very, very angry, rightfully so, about
Right.
Hamas attacking Israel. And it had just shifted since then to more and more Israel has kind of been, hitting at Hamas in the Gaza Strip really, really hard and relentlessly for now at this point 2 years. And that does kind of change, I think, a lot of people's opinions, having watched it go on for this long and now the death toll racking up on the Palestinian side to tens of thousands. It's really hard to get precise numbers, but it's definitely in the tens of thousands, and a lot of them women and children, not necessarily like active combatants. So
I remember bringing up what you brought up about the beginning of when that was all first happening and us having to report on it. And we were keeping up with the conflict nearly every day, nearly every hour, because especially because we were so scared about getting anything wrong. And like I'm sure that we did get a few things wrong. Um, because it was just like us and our exec team at the time and our news editor who we were all like very much trying to work together as a team to get everything right. And with all this new information that has come out, yeah, like I think I think a ceasefire deal would only help in terms of hoping, praying that there's like less death and destruction, especially amongst the Palestinian people.
I think something that's been really hard about this conflict in particular is like since the beginning, there has been a lot of propaganda, I would say on both sides, and it's been really hard to discern from the start of it which side is telling the truth about what. And so certainly like having to sift through all of that has not been easy at all for even now it's still difficult to kind of understand the reality on the ground there and like unless you're kind of there present, it's hard to understand. Even if you are there present, I've heard it's pretty hard because they don't really show you everything that might be the most like damning, for instance. But part of it is if they do reach a peace deal, then maybe we can start to learn a bit more in actuality of how devastating this really has been. Even though I think the Palestinian reporters and journalists who have often been targeted throughout this have been reporting consistently throughout and also doing good work that does indicate that it has been a genocide. And people will like split hairs about what does a genocide even mean? How do you define it? The definition that I've heard a lot is the destruction of a group in part or whole systematically. And I mean, it's kind of a wide definition, but I struggle to see how this wouldn't qualify as
Yeah.
that. Hopefully, if they do reach a peace deal, I think we can talk a little bit more about the specifics of
Hmm.
that, the terms that they've reached, and also maybe what people knew and when and what that means.
And with that, I think it's time to cover our lighter topics of the week, unless you have anything else to say.
No, I think I'm good for now, but we'll revisit it for sure.
And let's start off with the lightest of them all, I guess, or deepest, depending on who you're talking to, is Taylor Swift released her 12th studio album, and it's called The Life of a Showgirl. And Colin and I both gave it a listen. It was released on Friday, a couple days ago. Currently, it's Sunday.
We both have thoughts.
Yeah. Um, I'm a Taylor Swift fan. I've listened to all of her stuff. I love a good pop girl, but I will say that this album was not what I expected. I'll start with that.
Okay.
Your turn.
No, I agree. So I listened to it probably two times at this
That's
point,
good.
all the way through. I liked listening to it in order because I think you get a better sense of like the cohesion of the album that way. And I agreed. First listen, the word I would use is bland. Like there wasn't a lot going on. There was no immediate standout. I wasn't like, oh yes, this song is going to be a big hit. I think there still were some standouts in retrospect, but it was kind of definitely not going to be album of the year. I've already said I think the album of the year will be Mayhem by Lady Gaga personally, but I wouldn't even say it was album of the month because there's other artists like Florence and the Machine releasing albums this month that I already anticipate will be better and they're not even out yet.
I also agree with you. There was no, on the first listen through, I was to it on the way to work, and there was no standout song. Like, usually with every Taylor Swift album, I'll be like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, a song will come out, and it'll be just
It'll
so,
grab you by the
like,
lapels.
literally, like, and it's so relatable somehow. I'm like relating to this, like, billionaire, like, 35-year-old, like, white woman, and like, all of her trysts and stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so me. Like she wrote this for me. This album, I really, really, really was hoping to relate to Eldest Daughter. Like I had high hopes for this title track, or not title track, of this track number 5, which is usually in the world of Swifties, the most vulnerable track on the album. And I was very, very disappointed by it. Like, I did not like the lyricism on it. I didn't really like the way it sounded either. I thought it was very, dare I say, like it felt a little AI-y of like oh my gosh, that
I've
seems
heard that
so
allegation
offensive,
thrown around.
but like everyone on social media has been joking and being like, maybe we underestimated the power of Joe Alwyn and William Bowery, which
Ooh,
is like her
that
his
is brutal.
his like um pen name that he wrote helped write songs under, which was only like 2 songs, but him having been her muse for like the past like 6 years, and now like
That's devastating.
and I'm just like I just am so I'm just shocked that this album wasn't anything that I expected because I know Taylor can write a good pop album.
So I have a bit of a theory about why it was a bit lackluster in both of our views and a lot of like Swifties, people online, etc. So if you remember, her last album, Tortured Poets Department, was really, really long. Like it had a ton of songs on it. It was kind of like I remember listening through it being like, when is this gonna end? It just kept going and going and going. And
And that was a double release.
yeah, so it was a double release, but I'm like, what if she had saved some songs off of Tortured Poets Department and kind of like reworked them as time went on? Like maybe she had, the time between that album releasing and this one, she could have developed them a little bit more or changed, the final product a bit. And I think like if she had saved some of those songs for this release, it could have made it for a more interesting product this time around. But I think she kind of like put it all out there last time and didn't have much to like on reserve.
And remind me, did you like Tortured Poets Department?
I did, but I thought I think her albums start off really strong in the first half and they kind of lose me in the second. And that's how I felt about both Tortured Poets and this one as well.
I like Tortured Poets. I did think it was too long, but some people called how long it was a cash grab, which I disagreed with. But this album, I do agree with that it feels like a cash grab, especially the multiple variations of a million different things that she's doing for this album. I I truly don't understand why.
So I didn't really understand the theme of it. So Life of a Showgirl, presumably it's talking about, her Eras tour that she just had, like the biggest tour. I don't know if by numbers that bears out, but like seems like the biggest tour that's ever happened in music almost. And so she's had that amazing world tour, gone everywhere, played everywhere. I mean, you saw her, right?
Yeah, I went to the last show of the first US tour, so in LA, and that is when she announced 1989 Taylor's version coming out.
Nice.
My little flex.
But yeah, so I was thinking like this album would be about her experiences on that tour,
Yeah.
but none of the songs really seemed to be about that. I think there were songs on Tortured Post Department that very much seemed like they were about touring and going on like I Can Do It with a Broken Heart.
Yeah.
That one seemed like it was very much about like being on stage all the time, like back to back to back. So I thought that this album would touch on that a lot more than it did, but it was more, I feel like it was kind of superficially about like fame and like, isn't fame so hard? Yada yada. I'm married now, or I'm gonna get married. I'm engaged.
Which
Like,
in this climate, I feel like another thing why I don't think this album is hitting is because people don't like famous people anymore. Like remember, I think we talked about this, right? On this podcast, or maybe
yeah,
am I like remembering it wrong? Did we talk about it personally or on this podcast?
either way.
Okay, well, we've talked about it, like how we kind of have this take that like in 2025, like people don't care as much about famous people and celebrity as much as they used to. And I think it's a good thing. Like I think it's exactly what celebrities want. Like I think
Seems like
they
there's more important things going on,
yeah,
like the stuff we talked about at the opening of this show, as
which
opposed
is kind of like a funny like oxymoron
to,
now that we're talking
yes,
about this on our show. But
we're part of the problem.
yeah. I think that is a reason why like something like this coming out isn't taken very well too, because like you said, it does feel very surface level. And one thing I know is that Taylor can write lyrics that are way deeper than what she released. Like, I don't want to be listening to a song about Travis's wood
Yeah.
or about how we all like fire. Like, I don't know, it just and it was also very millennial, which didn't really hit very
The way
well.
I felt about that song Wood in particular, which yeah, was like an innuendo. I feel like in order for it to be an innuendo, it has to be subtle in order to be interesting to actually like have people thinking about or like has to have like a double entendre. But I feel like it was so on the nose and like again like overt or almost yeah, surface level that like there wasn't room for analysis really. It just was what it was. And I think what makes Taylor Swift so interesting as an artist is there's always these layers of complexity and nuance that like people want to dig through and endlessly comb through. I think it could be a bit much personally,
Yeah.
but this one in particular felt like it was very on the surface, which is fine, but it's just not, I think, what people have come to expect from her specifically.
The fun part about being a Taylor Swift fan is like those Easter eggs. And sometimes, yeah, you're right. Some people do read into them a lot. And I have a perfect example of one that I think is actually ridiculous, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Is the die-hard Swifties are saying that this album is all satire and it's written from the perspective of how the world sees Taylor Swift in that she is just some surface level pop girl. And they theorize that The Life of the Showgirl double feature will come out and it'll be the deep Taylor Swift that we know and love. And I think that is the
I think
most
that's
ridiculous
ridiculous.
theory that I've ever heard. Like, I feel like, and I talked about it with our mutual friend. I was like, the only way that she could possibly make this work is if it was released like the a day later or at most a week later. So maybe I'll give her like 5 more days to release the real quote, the secret life of the or the life of a showgirl, and have it be the exact same track titles, but have it be the quote real song, and then she has to wipe the entire first version and be like, haha,
Wow.
just kidding.
Well, that would definitely be pretty extreme. I personally don't see it. There's a trend on I think like Instagram where people there's a guy I saw who was making fun of Swifties who was like saying like your favorite Swiftie actively in psychosis, and he was like mocking them with like a pen and a notepad, being like, "Look, guys, if you take all the first letters of every single track title and you rearrange them and you did this and that," like he had this whole like running thread of your like Swifties in active psychosis, and I thought that was pretty funny because like the levels of delusion that someone would have to like buy into in order to I mean, if that did happen, I don't know. I don't think it warrants like erasing the whole album. It was fine. It was just a lackluster album for her standards, I think. And, you know, that happens. And I think people, it would be really hard for her to top what she did in 2023 with Eras, Tortured Poets, World Tour,
Plus
Time
rewrites
Person of the Year. Like she was literally Time Person of the Year. And I think it's only natural that things kind of
a pendulum.
yeah, you reach a culmination point and then you kind of fall off again. And if this is her
And then
falling
she'll
off,
come
it's
back.
fine. Yeah. Like everyone has these peaks and valleys.
And I think that is something that I've seen too is people people not being able to accept that not everything will be a masterpiece, and it's nothing on her personally, like, or on her past artwork. Like, I will defend so many of her albums till I die, but not this one for sure. I'm so sorry. But do you have a favorite song on the album or
Yeah.
anything that you want to specifically call out that stood
Yeah.
out to you?
So I mean, I actually liked the first three songs pretty well. Starting with I guess Fate of Ophelia, I thought it was good. It was the the
I actually like Fate
metaphor
of Ophelia too.
the metaphors were a bit like mixed, and you're not really. I don't think it's good to like mix literary allusions, and it seemed like it was getting into like you know Ophelia from Hamlet, but then also a little bit of like Rapunzel, and it was just kind of messy in my opinion. But sonically, it was fine. Um, I like a good Shakespeare allusion too, even if it's not perfect. I liked Elizabeth Taylor the second song,
I don't like
the
that one.
best. That was my favorite
Really?
one. I think so, yeah.
I'm
Okay,
gonna listen to it from your
I
eyes.
liked the lyrics. It had a catchy chorus, and the line "only as hot as your last hit" I thought was true, and kind of speaks to what we're talking about too. So maybe there is a bit of satire irony in that line. And then also, my favorite line in the whole album was, "I would trade the Cartier for someone to trust." Just kidding. And that was from that song, Elizabeth Taylor. It didn't. So obviously Elizabeth Taylor being an actress and Taylor Swift, there's like they have the same name, but I felt like it was kind of just name droppy. Like it wasn't really about anything pertaining to Elizabeth Taylor as far as I could tell. So it did feel a little bit just like dropping that name.
Yeah, I liked Actually Romantic a little bit,
Oh, that
but
was my
then
least
I
favorite.
re-listened and I didn't like it.
Uh,
I re-listened to it today and I was like, oh, never mind. I don't know what I was seeing. Our mutual friend had told me if you listen to the album without the lyrics, it's really good. Like she was like saying that she had to actively block out the lyrics so that she can like listen to it sonically and she really liked it. Which Fate of Ophelia I really like sonically. I actually didn't mind the title track at all. It's just nothing special to me. I like Sabrina. I think Sabrina outsings Taylor just a little bit. Um I like Sabrina's part of the song like way more. I thought it was a cute closer, and I think that that song would have worked and could be kept on this album thematically if other songs on the album fit in better with this theme.
mhm,
Like I could totally imagine Bejeweled from Midnight's on this album. Like that is the vibe that I wanted in this album. Like
mhm.
that or I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. Like what you were saying earlier, like I thought it was going to be songs about her being on the Eras tour, like the pitfalls of putting like so much pressure on yourself to like perform the best or do the best, like at the same time like having this like new public romance. Like she doesn't need to not write about Travis. Like
Mhm.
I don't know. It just someone had said that once you reach the top, you're not hungry for it anymore, so you're not as try hardy. And I
Well,
could
this felt pretty
somewhat
try-hardy in my opinion. In the same way it
agree.
felt very millennial, and millennials and try-hard kind of go hand in hand sometimes.
Like, I don't know. I don't think that you have to be heartbroken to make good music, but in this case maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. So I agree with you. The last track was pretty good as far as the other songs go. Again, it lost me in the second half of the album, but to close it out, it was fine. I had a question for you because this is what the song is kind of about. Have you ever met someone you really looked up to or like a star and then been disappointed by the interaction or like how they, came across?
No, I've never met anyone famous who also I don't think I'm the type of person to go up to anyone famous unless you're Olivia Rodrigo. So sorry, Olivia. You're listening to this podcast. I'm sorry for interrupting your time at Jamba Juice. Um, but I can't imagine like fully meeting somebody outside of it being like a paid for or set up thing, you know? Like I wouldn't be going up to somebody on the street, whether that be any type of public figure really. Um, but maybe I'm a hypocrite because I just said that I did that to Olivia Rodrigo. To be fair, she and her two friends were the only other people in line for Jamba Juice and they weren't talking or anything. I kind of just was like, "Hey, I'm a fan."
I haven't particularly met like any famous person either. Although someday on this podcast, I'll tell the story of meeting Dick Cheney. That was interesting slash strange. Kind of like throwback to my neoconservative past. Um,
Oh
we'll tell
God.
that story
Oh
another
God.
time. Would not. Yeah, I mean, when I met him at the time, I was like 11. It was just like at a event, and I've come to see him very differently in the years since. So not sure I'd be as likely or willing to meet him again.
I do think that that phrase, never meet your idols, holds standing. I do think that there's a reason why people say that. And looking at that question and that song, it's funny because I actually thought about like Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift and their relationship because I know that she also grew up a big Swiftie, like always talked about Taylor Swift and everything like that. And then they had this not huge falling out, but just this silent falling out, like didn't really talk anymore. She never mentions Taylor or anything. Like I can't imagine becoming famous and then all of a sudden never being able to talk about the thing that an artist that I love. Like I couldn't imagine doing something like that. You know what I'm saying?
It
Like
seems
if I couldn't talk about Olivia Rodrigo or I'm a Taylor Swift fan, so like or Taylor Swift or like whatever, that would be crazy to me.
Seems like there was a weird tension between the two of them starting like a year into Olivia Rodrigo's career, and why that was is not exactly clear. Maybe it was something about like the rights that they had over the song. I've heard stuff like that. And then people, when Vampire came out by Olivia Rodrigo, they were saying like this is about Taylor Swift, although that was not like confirmed. But yeah, that like tension between, because you have to remember like despite the fact that these people are so public and very famous, they're also just people, so they can have conflict like any other people. And I think Rodrigo and Taylor Swift have written about that extensively in really interesting ways. But speaking of conflict between famous people, well, I don't know, do you have anything else about Taylor Swift?
No. That was all that I had to say too. Marissa, I'm so sorry for listening to it without you. Listen to it with you soon. Anyways, moving on.
So, speaking of conflict about famous people, recently there were some shots traded between, well, mostly coming from J.K. Rowling at Emma Watson. Emma Watson, who has kind of not been super high profile lately, although having starred in like Harry Potter, everyone knows who she is. She did a public interview for the first time in a while and was talking about her relationship with J.K. Rowling. So, did you see that? I think she was on a podcast.
Yeah, it was a podcast. I didn't listen to the whole podcast, but when I was seeing the headlines, I looked up the clip of what Emma was saying about J.K. Rowling, and it was essentially her saying that she treasured her time with Rowling, but disagrees on her ideas when it comes to trans people.
hmm Yeah, essentially that's exactly it. And Rowling kind of fired back on X specifically and wrote this pretty long post, which maybe we can like edit in here, but to paraphrase it, she's essentially saying she'd known Emma for a really long time, but she would have a hard, if not impossible, time forgiving her because she felt like Watson and Daniel Radcliffe really piled on when Rowling was getting attacked by like trans activists and people who were really involved in gender ideology, and Rowling felt really apparently hurt and betrayed by that, and that she can't imagine making amends, that she had stayed quiet about this for a long time because she didn't want to like harm the essentially the children that she'd watched grow up, but now that they're all adults and she feels attacked, she was defending herself on X. So how do you feel about that? Are you particularly like a Rowling fan, Harry Potter fan, or any of this? I know you're more of a Percy Jackson fan.
No, but I'm a huge Harry Potter fan as well. Um, those movies and those books just mean so much to me, and I'm sure everyone, a lot of people. And I will say, like, I know about all the drama between J.K. Rowling and specifically Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson. Like, I knew it was. I think I remember looking it up when I was younger because I forgot how I don't even know how old we were by the time those movies wrapped up. I think we were in like middle school.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really
surely
young.
not high school yet. Or early middle school even. And I think I learned about the drama in like high school, and that was kind of an introduction to me about um them as professionals and how they handle different, I guess, political views. I personally don't think that Emma said anything wrong on this recent podcast. We were talking about it and we think it's like a buildup of different things. If I was Emma Watson, I think that answering that question, that was a very eloquent way of answering and a very good way in terms of still respecting her past with J.K. Rowling, but standing behind what she believes in, which is everything that I think I stand for in terms of making sure you are true to yourself and your beliefs.
Yeah, I had a little bit of exposure to this conflict a couple of years back, because in 2023 there was a podcast called The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, and I think it's actually a very well done series because it takes you from kind of the start of gender ideology when it was really becoming very pronounced, and this was like a conflict that was emerging just in the culture in general, and how Rowling felt very strongly about it, started posting mostly on X, I think, just her own opinions about it. I think she has a pretty nuanced take when it comes to like trans individuals, where she thinks that they should be treated with respect, and treated mostly as if they're just any other person. However, she thinks that when it comes to like feminist issues, like sharing the same space, like prisons and like changing rooms and whatnot, that there should still be a distinction where like trans people and women are not in the same proximity. So Rowling kind of takes that stance and still thinks that people should be treated with respect, although I think she does have particular questions about like young people under 18 and whether they should be allowed to go through with like surgeries and et cetera, et cetera. But I think her opinion is not lacking in nuance, and I don't think that she was particularly like aggressive in her um, posting, although it did become like a single issue that she was really honed in on. Um, but I don't know, have you had past experience just watching Rowling or people who like look up to Rowling kind of lose interest in her or even start to dislike her because of her social media?
I honestly think I'm one of those people. I think that not that I don't like hate on her. I think that the the world that she built is so important to who I am today. A lot like Percy Jackson. As an adult, rereading certain things, and seeing kind of what people are saying are in regard to her characters or her choices within the movies for certain like cultural characters. Like I look at the twins that Harry and Ron like went on a date with to the
Oh yeah.
ball. And their outfits could have been way better within their culture. Or I remember like all just all the characters. I feel like in terms of the cultural characters, like the POC characters, Cho Chang could have been written better.
I remember
A bunch of the different
the
characters.
Republicans and the right used to be really mad at Rowling because after the books were all published, they accused her of engaging in like tokenism and saying like, well, actually, like Dumbledore was gay and like he was gay the whole time, but I never wrote it into the story, but like you just have to believe me. And so the right was really like looking at her like she was trying to pander to the left. So it's really interesting that now Rowling is kind of disliked by the left for not incorporating trans people into like the, I don't know, in her worldview and her political beliefs, and not incorporating like supporting trans people um as part of her like platform.
That's really interesting because the Dumbledore is gay thing, I remember that coming out and I was like, "Oh God, what is she talking about?" It felt very
I could
like
see it. Him and Grindelwald, like what were they up to? I don't know.
like yes, but I feel like she was just like throwing a bone out there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I totally agree that like she was trying to pander to the audience because she was under too much like fire at the time and like now still is.
And maybe
Um
that's why she's having like she took such a strong stance on this one, in a way standing up to like leftist activists and putting her foot down and being like really uncompromising, some people might say, about it. And maybe that's informed her strategy here a bit.
yeah, I could see that. I feel like this like tweet, people love Emma Watson. Like I think Emma Watson is a very beloved actress. Um and I honestly think it's because she stays out of the limelight. A lot of people have like when you see less people on social media and their presence, more of that mystery and not really like knowing them, I guess you have kind of less of a parasocial relationship with them and you don't really quote know the actor actress that well. So professionally, you're able to look at them and look at their art and I guess maybe respect it more or have the illusion of respecting it more, which I kind of agree with in why people love her. I personally love her and that hate for J.K. Rowling and it might even come back because of this, but I don't think she's going to relent in what she's saying.
Yeah, like so one of the things that Rowling was really critical of Watson on X about was saying like Watson will never know what it's like to grow up impoverished and to have to kind of like scrap to get to the top. And Rowling, wrote the Harry Potter series. I think she was on like government benefits at the time. She had gotten divorced from a situation that she says was not great and had a daughter, was trying to raise it as a single mom and writing Harry Potter at the same time as sort of her outlet, her escape from the life that she had. And then became a billionaire for creating Harry Potter. And so like it's this crazy story in and of itself that a lot of people like connect to and aspire to. And so what or Rowling was saying like Watson will never understand that because she from a young age was made a millionaire, multimillionaire because of Rowling and her creation. So there's sort of this I think both Watson and Rowling recognize like they're each adults who have their own independent beliefs. They can believe what they believe, but Rowling was just pointing out like Watson's opinions are not coming from the same like grounded place that I think she thinks her own opinions come from. Like I think she thinks that her beliefs are very common sense about like trans people and women and how they should not be in like shared spaces. But um, Watson disagrees, and they're allowed to have that disagreement. It's just a matter of when it becomes very public, and it speaks to the tension, the conflict that's going on in the broader culture, though, because this is an issue that people have really had to think about in the past couple of years. So I don't know. I personally think I come down more on Rowling's side. I think you come down more on Watson's side. So maybe we're like our own little microcosm.
I also think multiple things can be true at once. Like that's the wonderful part about understanding like intersectionality. Like I think that J.K. Rowling calling that out is true. Like Emma Watson had a very different childhood than J.K. Rowling did, but J.K. Rowling had privileges too in her childhood of like not having to grow up in the limelight, and some people say that's not a privilege and some
Mhm.
people say it is because she had privacy. So it really is about,
Interesting point for
you know
sure.
what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's just so nuanced in how you break down the way that people identify um intersectionally, and like it doesn't mean that someone is like completely all wrong or completely all right. It's about their perspective on the world and their lived experiences.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take, and I don't have too much else to add to it. I guess I could talk a little bit about I think why Rowling is so like why this is her issue. If you listen to that podcast series about again the witch trials of J.K. Rowling is what it's called, it talks about how back when Rowling was getting her start as an author, like the people coming after her again were like more of the right, like the people who said she was pandering, or people especially who thought it was like witchcraft and sorcery were coming
Oh
after
God.
her, saying like
Yeah.
you can't read Harry Potter because it's like a gateway to the occult, which
Oh, trust, because I that was like not allowed in my Catholic school. So, I mean, eventually it was, but in the beginning,
so
no.
not that I don't even completely disagree with that, but I do think like the dogpiling on Rowling was insane from when it was coming from the right, and I think to the other extent when it's coming from the left because she has personal beliefs about like again sharing spaces in particular and also whether or not it's incumbent on people to validate another person in their identity. That gets very messy because there's this issue of like compelled speech, and because a trans person says that they're this gender, or is it now incumbent on everyone else to again use their pronoun or to treat them in that way even though it might make them uncomfortable to do so. And so I just think like whenever there's something that's really contentious, and whether it's the right or the left dogpiling on, I think once that dogpiling starts, you've already kind of lost your way a little bit. People oftentimes need to take a step back and again remember that everyone is an individual who, like as you said, they come to their individual perspective through their own life experiences. So if you take a nuanced look at J.K. Rowling's life, I think there's a great explanation for how she arrived at where she arrived, and you have to listen to her again through like these podcasts and through her explaining her positions to understand why she believes that. And if she can do that in good faith to like trans individuals and people who support trans individuals, then I think that's how the best solutions tend to emerge. But Rowling was just saying that she felt very attacked and dogpiled from the beginning, that there was almost like this campaign against her that shut down all possible conversation. And I think that's why she felt so hurt when like Watson and Radcliffe allegedly joined in that. So I don't know. Do you have anything to say about like, I guess this idea of like your friends supporting you even when they disagree with you, and how could you imagine like how she might be feeling as far as like that betrayal when they didn't need to agree with her, but they also were, in her view, like joining in the dog pile.
I think it happens a lot in pop culture and on social media, especially nowadays, where people's past will be brought up or things that they've done or something like that has been brought up, and people are very afraid of public scrutiny and, like being torn apart on the internet is not an easy thing to go through, I'd imagine. Like even when I get like one hate comment, I'm like, oh God, which maybe we'll get to later. Or one hateful thing, I already like become the smallest person. And I can't imagine going through something like that. Um,
Like allegedly, Rowling was getting death threats from different individuals. I obviously can't like independently verify that, but she said she was getting, threats on her family and had to like really beef up security. Just her life was not the same pre and post taking the position she took. And I agree with her in the sense of like whether that's coming from the right or the left, we should be against it regardless of the issue at hand. Um, in this case, I happen to also mostly agree with her on what she has to say about, again, the issue at hand, and maybe you don't, but I think like we can both agree that the way of engaging people you disagree with is really important and can't be done in bad faith.
well, yeah, it's I think doing something like this, like we talk, and the point of our podcast is that things things can change through discourse, and we can listen to one another when it comes to like death threats or anything like that. When it comes to the internet, I don't think it's ever right to be threatening each other's family or have threats against any person, like what you were saying. Like I don't every person is their own individual who deserves like respect and dignity, and I don't think throwing it back on anyone is going to do any justice. Um, Having said that, like trans people also are one of the most targeted people, and I don't think that's right either. Obviously, like I took a class, and I think Black trans folks are the most targeted, killed people um in recent years in terms of the groups in the US. This was in 2023 that I read that statistic, so I'm not sure if it's true now. I hope it's not. And at times people were saying that she got what she deserved or stuff like that, which I also don't agree with. I think that people need to listen to full interviews, like full clips, and not taking certain things out of context.
I think you make a great point about like people who tend to live on sort of the margins of the mainstream. So people who, I guess, in America are not white or not straight or, any number of things, not wealthy perhaps. Like people who are more marginalized by their identity are the most vulnerable in a lot of ways to attack because they might not have the resources at their disposal to defend themselves. And I guess the question of how to address that is how how can you like my personal belief is I think each individual should be empowered on an individual basis to stand up for themselves and what they believe, and I think like free speech is the best way to ensure that everyone has an equal shot at doing that. But it raises a real question of like people who are targeted for being marginalized, how do you ensure that they are protected enough that they're also having a voice and being heard and not like fearing for their existence in their life in the same way that Rowling was made to fear for her existence in life. I just think like this issue is a really big issue about what Rowling is talking about, but I think there's even another layer to it when it like coming down to the ways that people engage in discourse in the culture to me seems like the core issue that we should really be looking to resolve and address because when people can't engage in that
Hmm.
conversation or they're so marginalized that they can't have their voice out there, that's such a big problem, I think.
I agree with that. This week, instead of burying the lead, we are going to be reading some of our hate comments because one of our videos got like 600 something views, which is our first long form content video getting above like what, like 50 views,
500?
like I want to say like it got a lot of views. And even our last video, the one before this, that one got like over 100 views as well. And we have gained some subscribers, and hopefully this episode doesn't lose them. Um, our new goal is 40. Right now we have 31 subscribers.
Yeah, so I'll pull up some of our past greatest hits here. Um, I thought so we had episode 24 was about ICE and what they've been up to in DC. We got a great hate comment right
Oh
here
yeah, that sounds
from
awesome.
Hale McCullough. 3 weeks ago he said, oh, it might be a she, I'm not sure. I don't see any crime going on my he's quoting us. He's paraphrasing what we
We'll
said.
edit. I'll edit it right here.
Said, I don't see any crime going on myself, so therefore there is no bad crime problem in DC. End quote. These hosts are dumb. You should not be so opinionated at that age because you're ignorant and don't know how things work. Oh, works. He spelled work wrong.
We kind of made a joke and we were like, yeah, we shouldn't have opinions at this age.
But to the merit of what he's getting at there, he was attacking us saying that we didn't see crime going down, therefore there is no crime. But that's not even what we were saying. We were saying we weren't saying that there was no crime in DC. There's plenty of crime. We see it everywhere. We were saying that we didn't think the National Guard was having a marked effect on bringing that
Crime
down.
down.
It might be in the statistics, but not by our observation on the street. So that was what we were talking about. I think he misinterpreted our position a little bit and then just threw in the "you're so young, you shouldn't have opinions" thing, which, believe us, we have considered that ourselves. But I do think that we have a right to speak as we've been talking about, and I think the way that people come to have fully formulated opinions in their adulthood is that they're given that space to explore things, talk about them, develop those opinions. Because it's unrealistic to expect everyone to have a fully formed opinion about everything from birth. Here's another one. This one was from our video about Charlie Kirk's death, which was getting a lot of comments because obviously it was a very charged issue. Someone wrote a very long comment.
And it kind of had less to do with it was just it seemed like a very long rant, and it just seemed like this person commented on this video because maybe they were going down a spiral of videos and finally we were like the last
The
like
garbage receptacle.
like literally, and that's what this comment felt like. I don't even know if we should like it's so long.
I'll read part of it.
Okay.
It says, sad that more important news items that haven't made the news, like the Hamas terrorists holding public executions in Gaza, Charlie Kirk offended so many marginalized groups, but I did happen to see his execution and it was horrible. Then I heard about Charlie loved hunting animals with Trump. Why don't animal lives matter? And it goes on from there quite a bit. Again, I think sort of the hallmark sign of someone going a little bit off the territory is that they start going into very disconnected issues, and that's how that comment kind of reads to me, where it starts off with Charlie Kirk, and then it talks about Gaza and Hamas, and then by the end we're talking about like hunting and animal rights. And I think this like long-winded kind of non-connected comment maybe reflects like you said, like they came across our video and that was just what was already on their mind. It wasn't really evoked by what we were actually even talking about.
And another thing about being journalists, reporters, or now political commentators is I think people are sometimes say things and they're like, "Oh, like why aren't you reporting on this? Why aren't you reporting on that? Like why do we care about this? Why aren't you caring more about this or that?" And that's not new to us. At the Vista, I remember there were always people commenting on things um that we like implicitly put out or explicitly put out. Like they'd be like, "Why did you choose that photo over this photo?" And that was like something that we would argue about, not argue, deliberate for like hours in the newsroom sometimes, like
Mhm.
especially when it comes to like harder hitting topics. We're like, well, if you look at this, like why if we put this photo, what if people interpret it this way? And you kind of have to think about it in a million different ways, and it goes along with what the topics you decide to report on. But at the end of the day, at least at our little podcast, like it would be so hard to report on every single topic. And
We
we
try our
do,
best, as evidenced by this episode. I think it's kind
yeah.
of a hodgepodge of topics, but that's because we're trying to cover everything that's relevant right now. But you can't honestly cover every single topic of interest at any given moment.
And unfortunately, a part of the news cycle is that like cycle of interdependence where like we want we would ideally want clicks and we'd ideally want to report on the news that people care about to get those clicks, and if people don't care about it then and I'm not saying that people don't care about any of those topics that this person had commented about, because I definitely care about those topics,
Yeah, we personally care about those issues as well.
and um we've reported on it before and we will again. And I would say the same thing to my younger self who would beat herself up about people who thought that we didn't report on certain topics at the Vista. Like I remember there was like two times that happened to me personally at the Vista where people were like, why aren't you guys doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Like, and it would be crazy because in our very next edition, a
Sometimes we'd even have it at print.
yes,
They'd
literally.
comment like, "Why aren't they talking about this?" And then the pages would already be at the printer on their way to be delivered to campus, and everyone was like, "Where is the story?"
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny, but I think like people don't understand necessarily how much behind the scenes work goes into producing a story in the first place, and so sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. We try to make that delay as small as possible, but
Yeah, but if you want less of a delay, send this to your friends so we can
make
work
this a
this full
daily.
time
Yeah,
daily podcast.
washed up daily. Okay, but I think far and away our more interesting hate comments come from Instagram.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Probably our most hated post and our most popular post, which ain't that how it goes, was when the the 12 Days War was kicking off and Trump had just bombed Iran. And I put up this kind of snide, snarky post just saying, I posted myself in front of the Capitol. I said, a quick civics refresh on which branch has the power to declare war, me in front of the Capitol building. And then I said, thank you for your attention to this matter, kind of like mimicking, mocking Donald Trump. And that blew up because it was very topical at the time. We got like 22,000 views on it, and all the comments were basically Trump,
Oh my
like
God, all
Trumpy.
Trumpy MAGAs just attacking us in the comments.
It was so, so rough because they're saying like
There's literally how many comments are there on this? Like 100
100,
plus. 130,
140 almost.
140. Okay.
They said, yeah, washed up in actually understanding war and declarations of such and definitions of armed conflicts. I'm like washed up. Yeah, we are like that. Our first of all, name is like a joke, washed up, because we are like
We're
really,
washed up.
but like also we're so
But
young.
we're young. Like
So
we're washed up collegiate journalists, but we happen to be fresh in the workforce, and our whole gimmick is that we're like washed up, but we want like Gen Z to like speak up and stuff like that.
So, yeah, kind of ironically washed up, but I think the irony was lost on that particular commenter. Then a lot of people were like splitting hairs about, well, it's not actually a war, but then Donald Trump himself was calling it the 12 Days War, and JD Vance was kind of like going back and forth on whether we were actually in a war or not, and it's still kind of unclear whether it was a war.
There's so many comments being like, who declared war? Or like, what war are you guys talking about? Like, go listen to your president. Like,
Yeah. I think it's so tricky what people agree to name things and call things, which is something we talked about at the beginning of this episode, but war is another one of those things where it's like, well, did they send troops into Iran from the US? No. Well, actually kind of. But they were on airplanes and they never touched the ground. So like is that a war? Donald Trump seemed to think so.
mhm.
And Vance was saying we're at war with Iran's nuclear program. And I'm like, okay, again, splitting hairs, semantics games, you could do that all day long, but the facts are the facts, and we bombed them pretty hard. I would call it a war.
Yeah,
And our point being that you have to consult Congress according to the Constitution. Another one, this one was from people were protesting in DC to the National Guard presence and federal takeover of the police.
we get a lot of comments from Trump supporters slash bots, it seems.
Yeah, so like
A lot of comments about paid
I
protesters.
posted a video of just protesters on the street from like me looking down on the street view. And a lot of people were saying like paid protesters, I'm sure. Um, Someone said, notice how in a city that is 60% black, the only people you see protesting are liberal white women from Idaho. It's like,
Um,
again, I think they're not engaging with the full like conversation that we've had about the issue. It's really more about like they're coming to the table with a set belief or perception that they're then imposing on what we've posted. And so that is unfortunate because it doesn't really drive the conversation or move things forward in a productive way, like we've said a couple of times. And to the point about bots too, I don't know what percentage of like commenters are not even actual like posters.
yeah, so like, am I feeling threatened by by fake by AI comments? Like, yes.
It's just strange because you know the media landscape, social media, it's so hard to even tell. Like I don't even really take any of these seriously or personally. I try to give everything its due diligence and credence, but it's hard to when like their username is some like jumble of random letters and you click on the profile and
And
there's
it's like
nothing there.
nothing, zero
It's like
reposts, just a bunch of hate comments.
either this is a person who's trying to hide behind anonymity or it's not even a real person, it's just like a bot. Now, I don't really understand how bots even operate, but it's an open question, like the percentage of users on social media that are actually not people.
True. I wanted to ask you, um, how you deal with hateful things on maybe your work or creativity, whether that be this or in the past in the Vista.
It's something I'm trying to get a lot better at. I definitely don't take it as personal as I did when I was like starting. I think that's true of both of us.
Hmm.
Um, I used to I used to take every criticism as like even if they didn't mean it personal, like what does it say about me as a person? But you really have to move away from that because I think oftentimes take on the other person's perspective and like I said, they're just interacting with what they see at the face value and you might know like what went into the creation of it because you put in all of the work to make it happen. But you have to be able to see it from your audience's point of view. And a lot of times, like I said, they're bringing their own set perspective to what they're engaging with. And it's actually saying a lot more about them and what they perceive than it even is saying about what you've created. That's really interesting to me. And I love like exploring that and breaking that down about like, well, what does this actually say about the person who's engaging in this way? Um, it can speak to your actual creation also. Like in the past when people have been critical of our coverage of different stuff, sometimes I think they were valid. And as time has gone on, I'm like, man, we would have handled that so differently. And maybe we'll look back even on this very episode and say that. I hope not, but you can only kind of do this moving forward and trying to expand your capacity. Um, and just creating on a routine basis so that people can start to build up an understanding of your own thought processes as well and start to engage them more deeply than just that surface level one time interaction that caused them a reaction that they felt the need to be critical in that way.
Hmm.
How about
No,
you?
I think that's good.
How do you deal with criticism in general or on
I
work?
close my eyes. Just kidding. I I definitely deal with it better than I used to. I remember in the beginning stages of having even just my work edited by the exec team when we were younger at the Vista when we were first starting out, when I was first starting out, I took their criticism like to heart, like each I think I had written something about it in my like journal and it was like every piece of criticism felt like a dagger to my heart or something like that because like it felt very personalized,
We feel like your
but
work is a reflection of you in some way. And it
mhm.
is, but it's also not actually you in another way. But
Yeah, and I think that the older that I've gotten and the more work that I've produced because now since being that younger like 19-year-old girl, now I'm 23 and I've done a lot more things like newsletters and future vista editions that I never even realized I could be able to do, and now this podcast that younger 19-year-old me would have never thought she'd be doing. And I hope that everything that I put out now that I'm proud of, and if it's something I'm proud of, then it is allowed to be criticized in things like maybe production value and in the way that things are said. Like there's always some way to improve. And even our Vista audiences, like they would say things or comment on things sometimes. And I think it's really important too to kind of differentiate between those like bot hate comments, and that goes with like bot people as well. Like there are sometimes people who leave comments or say things and it's like they're only, like you had said, commenting on like what they think it is, like the perception of it. Like maybe they didn't even read the whole article. Like I
very rarely, I think,
would
would
they read the
read the whole
whole
article.
article? Like I remember I think I was a sophomore. Yeah, I was like 19 or 20 and I'd written um an arts and culture story about Will Smith slapping the slap.
The
I
slap
remember.
around the world,
Yes,
that's what I
yes.
called it. Yeah.
And or maybe I was a junior, I don't remember whatever year that came out. And I'd written that article, and there was this girl who had posted it on her story, like the cover of it, and she said that it was horrible and that we're covering things that are too Hollywood and not real news, and that it was like Black History Month or something like that. It was like a whole rant about it, and you could like see my name on it and like all this stuff. And I remember some of my classmates sending it to me and being like, I swiped up because like she didn't even read the article, because in actuality the article was about, I think, like black anger and the way that things are perceived. Like I interviewed these different professors and um black artists to actually highlight it because of Black History Month and talk about how um how that anger and violence is shown as a black man and as an artist too. And I don't think that it was some silly nuanced way of representing what had happened and repeating what everything is that's been said. Like something that I always like to say is, can we add to this conversation? I do think to this day I think that that article did add something to this conversation rather than just regurgitating everything that's being said. And that is an
Yeah.
example of someone not reading the full article who you can't really take hate from if they don't read the full thing or watch the whole thing or go beyond listening to a clip.
And I think again, like being willing to give people grace, whether that's like us, we would appreciate it, but whether just in general for anyone who's consuming content at all, being willing to give people that grace is something we talked about throughout this whole episode. I think it comes up with Taylor Swift, it comes up with celebrities in general, with J.K. Rowling and Emma Watson, and like just being able to understand that people are people, that they have this individuality to them that you can't criticize or attack in any true meaningful way. You might disagree with someone like on the surface level issues, but they're entitled to their individual stance and perspective. Um, I guess, and also just highlighting that I think, remain our harshest critics.
Yes.
Uh,
I am my biggest bully. Trust me, you guys.
and
Like,
I think that's to our advantage because I think well, it allows us to to iterate and continually improve. I think, um, we're, but at the same time, we have to go easy on ourselves and not like take everything apart surgically. Like I feel like I already am like starting to dissect this episode even as
me too.
we're rounding it out here. So we always appreciate the feedback. You can email us at washedupweekly@gmail.com. However, believe us that we're also conversing with each other, trying to improve and making that essential part of the show.
All good?
Yeah,
Washed
washed
up
up
out.
out.